Alright team, here's a video recap thing of me talking over an ops from a few weeks ago. This was one of our Sunday ops, and yeah. One of the things that we did on this ops that was pretty cool that we don't normally do is this formation galaxy trick. So basically we saw this base that needed defending and we're like, how can we try it? Let's try something different. And so we basically took the two different galaxies, both of them with proximity repair, bulldogs on each and half a crew each, basically enough to man the guns. We also had two people just diving out as light assaults, causing all sorts of havoc, and we came in to try and help out at Haid Skydock together. So the main thing that we were trying to do here is make sure we stayed in formation. The general idea that we planned was that Numbers would be the lead one and I'd just kind of follow behind, and we kind of maintain our formation, but I do break it a few times because I'm rather naughty like that apparently. And we bump into each other and all this sort of jazz, as you do. But we basically were rolling around in the air here, and we responded to a call for help at Haid Skydock here. They'd marked a couple of vehicles and sunders and stuff that were causing them issues, and so we wandered on over. And so because we had the proximity repair, that was tanking up our effective health, which means that we're repairing our damage as long as we're taking it, in addition to the galaxy's already large hit points. So whenever the enemies are firing at us, when they have to reload, we repair a fair chunk of that damage that they've dealt to us. So as long as they actually have to start focusing on their burst damage rather than their sustained damage to kill us. And because Numbers and I were also able to maneuver ourselves to block line of sight, so I could hide behind Numbers or he could hide behind me, we were able to rotate the damage that we were taking as well. And this is what helped us to basically out-tank that damage. So we don't need to showboat or anything like that in the galaxies to try and dodge fire, because we know that the amount of hit points that we have is enough for us to stand there and take it, and our gunners will kill them before they kill us. And that's more or less how it works. And also turn my bulldog on. And then we got that galaxy, and then not galaxy, Sunderer. And we found another one, so we kind of drift over to this one. This is a bit where we're almost breaking the formation thing, except we're still kind of in range. But then shortly afterwards, I actually kind of get a bit wobbly, which isn't as good as it needs to be, but it was definitely the first time we've ever done this, and it was a pretty good effort, I think. And then we have a pretty epic bail anyway, and we collectively drop down and get the Sunderer there.
Alright, we're about
there
to
we go.
To that defensive marker if you need it still. Unless you need another one.
Nope.
Explosions. Nice and epic.
That's great, guys.
Nice to visit.
And yeah, that's our little trick thing there, which is pretty good. And the command chat that was going on was pretty helpful for us in finding the targets and knowing where to go and things like that as well. So solid effort all round. And then now we sort of move on to the main part for the night that worked for us. So after this last move, we'd gone down to the substation there, and we'd started a cap there, but then another platoon rocked up, so we were like, okay, well, we don't need to be here to do a ghost cap while they're here. So we moved ahead to the next base, which was there, and our plan was to basically be ready to cap this base. So it's a 7-minute base, it's a long one, but, you know, we didn't really intend to straight up capture it or anything like that. My plan was mostly just harassing it, and if we got it, we got it, and if we didn't, we didn't, but that's more or less it. And it's a kind of defense in that way where, like, if you're fighting on their territory, then you've actually secured your own borders because of how the capture rules work for PlanetSide. So the more you're fighting on their territory, the more secure your own borders are, because suddenly if you get to the situation where they're fighting you on several fronts, you sort of, it's the death of 1,000 cuts, and you're kind of trying to choose which of your bases you can save because they're all ticking the wrong way, and it's quite stressful. Whereas if you've got this sort of situation going on, it kind of works a lot better. So that base flipped in our favour, and then we started capping here. It was kind of a close fight there. We had one of our guys was back at the base, back at the previous base helping out with the cap, and he was telling us that it was pretty close. So what happens next is a pretty long sort of fight for this base. It's got a bit of back and forth going on. And in the meantime that we had to set up, we've actually brought up a couple of different Sunderers. So at this point in time, we've got 2 stealth Sunderers set up and one deployment shield Sundra that's in the vehicle bay next to the Charlie capture point.
Lock down that spawn.
And for the first part of this capture, we're not really stressed out too much. It's a bit ghost cappy, but that's usually to be expected. Usually what we find is we'll go out and start a fight, and then as the timer starts ticking down, the groups that are looking for playing the territory game will come to find us. So the first half of our caps are usually a little bit boring, and then they get really exciting near the end in some cases. So that's the numbers there chasing off after one of their galaxies that turned up.
That's me.
And yeah, so for the most part, we're holding out around the A on this map.
Oh,
The choke point basically goes where I'm standing, and there's to the left there's the path through the building that goes to A.
Gotta do some
And
wrestling.
if you want to actually get down to either the B or the C point, the only other way is sort of over the far edge and
see it.
in the
It's not
vehicle
going
bay, and
towards
it's
us.
quite a long way around. But it's quite an efficient way is to spawn some vehicles, because it's hard for us at the A point to deal with any vehicles because they're sheltered on that north side. And so what you'll see shortly is the TR guys that do turn up ready to beat the crap out of us will spawn vehicles, and they will go around that north side, and then they'll come down to flank the Sundra at C.
Yeah, listen.
This Sundra here that we have is a stealth Sundra, and this is like, we were really surprised at how long this one lasted. It was amazing. And the cloak bubble actually projects up onto the staircase as well, so you can kind of get some pretty sneaky stuff. But we were really surprised that it didn't get found a lot sooner.
You mean to hang out here or move
So
up?
this is where the TR sort of responded to us. They managed to retake the C point. Bugs and myself had a crack up here, but we got somewhat destroyed in our attempts to retake this one. These TR players quite know what they're doing, which is always a good challenge to take on. So the population now has turned against us slightly, 60-40, but with the numbers that are so low, it's actually the actual number of people isn't that different. But you never know. So the weird thing here is that after we lost this Sundra, the TR sort of disappeared for a little bit, and we were able to get back on our feet, and we didn't really lose a lot of the capture progress that we'd made, because we had a couple of good light assaulty solo-ish players in the squad that were doing a good job of keeping that flank open. So at this point we had a lot of pressure coming onto our spawn Sundra from the TR that were kicking around here. And then after that we did actually lose it, and we had to bring up a few more, but we constantly had a stream of Sundras coming over the course of the fight. So if someone lost their Sundra, they'd bring up another one.
They're pulling vehicles.
And yeah, it all worked out pretty well for us.
One just found my landmines.
So at this point, this is where they're starting to pull the vehicles. One of our guys, Googs, was calling out the fact that his tank mines got triggered and he took a kill. So there's a bunch of harassers kicking around. The other thing that was kind of working for us in this is we had our scythe pilot, Baron Deathmark, and he was doing a pretty good job of responding very quickly to air-to-ground stuff like these sites and things like that. He was using pods and things like that. He did a very good job of keeping all that up. This bit, I had no idea what I was thinking. I walked down here as a medic into a gatekeeper harasser, so clearly I had well thought out that plan. Alright, so at this point it sort of gets this feeling like the TR that were here leave. Because obviously it's a pretty decent idea, is, you know, just the Sundra is dead, okay, they're not going to be here much longer. So if they hadn't already found our stealth Sundra, which we don't really have any evidence that that was the case, then it makes sense that if there was like a fast moving group coming to get us there, they'd be like, okay, well that's, you know, the Sundra's gone, so they'll peter out, we'll let the random teammates take them out and resecure the base. But because we still had that stealth Sundra, we were able to sort of hold on to the base, so we ended up flipping this one back. And it just sort of turns into more of the same with that fight. So we turned this around. And a couple of the names that on the TR side that turned up to kick us out there, we don't see anymore after this. Which is a mite confusing, but again, the random Sunderers was apparently something. So this base is, that particular capture point is pretty interesting because the actual capture zone is on the balcony there. So what you can do is just play a light assault and you hang out up on that balcony and you can cause it to flip and you can move around, sort of playing ring around the rosy there on that capture point. So at this point I'm sort of trying to direct the team as to what we should focus on, and we get distracted. There's a Max over in that corner near the C point, so I decide, okay, I'll be the sneaky light assault, go flank. There's a guy on the top of that building there, and I don't want to try and engage him. I realise that I got spotted, so I sort of start taking a slightly longer way around to hopefully shake the spot in the time it takes me to circle back. And then a little bit of C4 magic. So there's the Max over at the tower there. So I'm actually in a really good spot, but I have to make sure that the Max doesn't get any cover so that I can approach him from this angle. And then that's the Max sussed out. And then we can make our way back up to retrieve that capture point. So in this meantime, we've always had at least one of the capture points. So the resecure on the TR side's been very slow. And right now we're actually taking the A point back, and we're most likely going to get the C point, and not all of our progress is going to be lost. So this is something that was a surprise to me with the TR Sunderer that was in our place, but just because of the random nature of planet side, there was a friendly mag rider here with an anti-vehicle gun. So I was sort of saying in proxy chat that there's a Sunderer there, and we pretty much just roll around and have a red hot crack at killing it. Nice and easy. Yeah, that's it. So the points are flipping all over the place, partly just because of our slightly random spawning. And yeah, and here we have Deathmark's basically done such a good job of keeping the vehicles on the vehicle pad sort of under control. So a lightning's rolled out and he's been like one of the first on it. This is in addition to 2 random mag riders that have turned up. And I'm moderately proud of myself here because I don't get killed by looking at the map for a change. Yes, ooh, there's, look at the map. Oh my god, there's a guy! And for once I survived this particular encounter. So at this point we've done a pretty good job of making sure. We have lost some of our Sunderers though, so a couple of us are bringing up some more. We're getting a deploy shielded one to go in the main bay, and a stealth Sunderer to try and sort of go out in the middle of nowhere, that's still a moderate distance from the base. It makes a good fallback point, so if you get wiped out, you can still spawn kind of close to the base, but not too close that it's ridiculously obvious. I think they both, the stealth Sunderer certainly gets caught out.
Yeah, I know.
But the main stealth one that we're spawning at that's underneath the stairs still hasn't been disturbed. And I think it goes that way for quite a while. So now we're starting to get a bit aggressive in trying to retake the A point. We're sort of getting there. We're still operating in a bit more of a casual sort of way, so we're kind of going in a bit 1s and 2s. It's not the end of the world, but everyone's playing their class pretty well and things like that. We've got like light assault and engineer characters up there controlling around their enemy vehicle spawn, which is a wonderful thing, and we've got tank mines going down and things like that. So yeah, we're doing pretty well considering our population difference here. And so most of the fighting's going on in that little A room at the moment. And there's gradually a steady stream of random Vanu characters turning up as well. And that actually, once the base capture timer gets sufficiently low, we actually get quite a significant reinforcement to push it through.
Thank you.
So here we are, we're just sort of making just most of our main fighting here. I use a revive grenade to Googs because he's in a bit of a hard spot for me to get to. These guys around the corner are all up there, and I run around and get myself killed because I'm so brilliant like that. You have no idea. But fortunately I do get myself a little bit revived. Or at least I hope so. So on the map there, you see number 5, trying to distract that prowler, either with tank mines
Enemy
or
spawn beacon, mate.
C4. One of the tricks that we've been
Just up on the dead
that some of the guys have gotten onto is they'll put tank mines down and then they put a turret just in front of the tank mine, so the tanks actually roll to a stop over the turret, and then the tank mines absolutely take them out. Just for a bit of chaos there. So we're still working our way up here. It's kind of stagnated at this particular gap. One of the options that you could do here is you take the staircase sort of flank that's down off to my right. But the danger there is as you apply that, once you turn to go into the building, you're exposing your back to the spawn room, and it's a bit dangerous. So yeah. So we managed to push in, and given that it's as empty as it is, you sort of have to start getting a bit suspicious as to where the other
bus coming this way.
enemy forces are, because if they're not here, they're still in the hex. You just don't know where exactly they are. And in this particular case, there's a couple that are pushing through here. But you do have to start wondering where the rest of their manpower's gone. And because we're just more or less just doing little skirmishy pot shots at this point. So now that we've gotten the capture timer down to 3 minutes, it's now less than a 4-minute base. So usually once you get the capture point on the capture timer on a 7-minute base down to that level, it starts looking a lot more attractive on the strategic map, because suddenly this one is worth as much effort as a 4-minute base for anyone who's starting to look for something to do. And given that the 7-minute bases are huge, and if you have the 7-minute base with 3 capture points, you can turn that into a 20-minute base just by stacking on and holding 1 capture point. And if you are a reasonably disciplined group, you can manage that pretty easily in some cases against some much larger numbers, as long as you can use your choke points pretty clever and that sort of jazz. Like in this particular case, there's only like 3 or 4 of the TR guys trying to push in through that direction, and there's a few more than that in terms of the Vanu who are on the point. We're still getting the odd light assault, taking the little flank here on the short stairs, but for the most part it's mostly under control, and I think that this is where the population starts to swing upwards on the Vanu favour a little bit, and this is where I was sort of saying how, because other people looking at the map now start going, oh well, it's only 4 minutes, we can go there, push through, and then we have a 7-minute base on our side. And given that the way things work on Briggs, where you basically get an alert every 3 hours, so because we've only got the one continent, so because this isn't an alert at this particular time, it's a good time to make a play for these 3-minute bases, because they're easier to hold for longer. So as long as the base doesn't get lost to a ghost cap between now and when the alert starts, or even during the alert, it can be a good way to set your faction up to lock the continent in the next couple of hours, depending on how much everyone keeps paying attention, that is. So by this time we've had a pretty sizable reinforcement. We've got at least an extra squad. That's from the platoon that was capping the substation beforehand. So they capped that substation and then they went elsewhere, and in that time we were fighting here, and then when we got the capture timer low enough, they came over to help us here. And yeah, at this point we're just hopefully waiting out the cap, assuming that we don't get massively flanked. And now normally on these sort of situations, if it's a single point base and you get to the last 30 to 40 seconds, you start getting really comfortable in terms of how long it is to the capture point, because most of those bases, the amount of time it takes to physically walk from the spawn room to the capture point can be about 25 seconds or so. So as soon as you get to that point where you know that they physically can't walk to the capture point in time to save the base, is when you can start thinking, well, hopefully start moving towards your next objective, and that way you keep your opponents on the defensive. So ideally you'd have an extra thing ready to go. So at this point I sort of went a bit dumb. I decided I was going to revive Draith no matter what, so I charged up to try and help it, and I got him. I think that's what's really important. And so yeah, we capture the base, and then I put a little logo on for the editing, and that's the end of the clip. So thanks guys.